So let's talk about Camelot. When you think of King Arthur, you probably imagine this golden age, right? Knights, chivalry, honor, the whole deal. But what if I told you that entire shining story was basically a lie? That the legend we all know is just covering up a much darker and way more interesting truth?
Well, this project kicks off with a pretty radical idea. Camelot wasn't some hero's paradise. Nope, it was more like a totalitarian state, a gilded cage where the knights were basically celebrities trapped by the shining, polished chains of their own perfect reputations. It's a world built on a fragile social order that is terrified of chaos, of nature, of just being human.
And that's the world of Verdant and Gold. It's this incredible deconstruction of the Sir Gawain legend, and it's told in a really unique way across 2 different platforms. It's a transmedia experience that's designed to just pull the old myth apart at the seams and rebuild it into something new. So, how does it do that? Well, the whole project is cleverly split into 2 parts that feed into each other. One part gives you the deep philosophical why behind the whole story, and the other part delivers the emotional gut punch how of one knight's personal journey.
The best way to think about it is like an iceberg. The animation, that's the stunning part you see above the water, the emotional story of Sir Gawain. But the comic book, well, that's the massive hidden structure underneath. It's all the deep lore, the complex philosophy, and the intricate motivations that give the whole thing its real weight.
So let's start with that foundation, the part under the water. Part 1 is called The Scripture, and it's presented as this really dense, kind of occult comic book. This is where all the big ideas are.
And the genre itself is a mouthful. It's called Renaissance Occult Deconstruction. I know, right? But what it means is you get this psychedelic, almost political takedown of Camelot, written in that dense, poetic style you'd get from someone like Alan Moore. This is not a light read. It's a deep philosophical dive that reframes the whole myth through things like alchemy and primal chaos.
And who's behind all this chaos? Get this, it's not some cackling villain. It's Morgan Le Fay, and here she's actually the protagonist. She's reimagined as this brilliant philosopher and anarchist who knows she's a character in a long-running comic book that has a lot of retcons, and she is determined to finally take control of her own story. This quote from her tells you everything you need to know about her motive. Morgan sees all the hypocrisy in Arthur's court. She doesn't want to burn it down. No, her plan is much more interesting. She wants to create a sort of psychological apocalypse just by holding up a mirror and forcing these knights to see the truth about their own self-satisfied virtue. To pull this off, she needs an instrument. So in this absolutely horrific, hallucinatory ritual, she takes a civilized lord and basically imbues him with the green skin of raw, untamed life. He becomes the Green Knight. But he's not a monster. He's an amoral force of nature, a biological weapon designed for one purpose: to test whether chivalry itself can even survive contact with reality.
Okay, so that's the dense, philosophical comic. Now let's see how all of that gets translated into part 2, the parable. This is where the ideas become a visceral, emotional story, told through a stop-motion animated production.
The style is called Gothic whimsy. Think Tim Burton. And you can see the whole conflict of the story just in the colors. On one side, you have Camelot, this gilded cage of perfect, almost suffocatingly bright pastels. Then you step outside into the wild, and everything is stark, haunting black, white, and this piercing emerald green. It's civilization versus nature, right there on the screen.
And our guide through this whole thing is Sir Gawain, but he is not the big, bold hero from the poems. In this version, he's a classic Tim Burton protagonist, pale, spindly, and super nervous. The animation really zeroes in on his personal, psychological journey as he heads out into the wild.
And his whole ordeal is so brilliantly structured. While he's being tempted in this strange castle, there are 3 hunts happening out in the woods, and the film cuts between them. This whole structure is designed to just pick apart his knightly identity, piece by piece. It starts with a test of his manners, then it becomes a test of his character, and finally it's a direct challenge to his most basic survival instinct.
So when you boil it all down, this entire project, both the comic and the animation, is really about a conflict between 2 incredibly powerful symbols.
On one side, you've got the pentacle on Gawain's shield. It's called a monosemous symbol, which just means it has one meaning. It's an endless knot, representing this rigid, impossible idea of perfection that kind of traps the soul. And on the other side, you have the green girdle. It's polysemous. It has many meanings. It represents the chaotic, messy, complicated truth of biological survival. And this, right here, is the most powerful idea in the whole thing. When Gawain, terrified for his life, accepts that girdle and hides it. That's not his failure. That's not his fall from grace. It is his liberation. It's the moment he finally wakes up from the simulation of chivalry and confronts the beautiful, messy truth of just being human.
So it's absolutely crucial to understand how these two parts, the scripture and the parable, are designed to work together. They're not just two separate stories, they create one single, unified world.
They create this amazing feedback loop of discovery. You can watch the animation and get a complete, totally powerful story on its own, but if you've read the comic, your understanding of what's happening in the animation becomes so much richer. And if you start with the comic first, the animation feels like this huge, visceral payoff to all that philosophy. Each part just makes the other one better.
The story's ending is just perfect. It's bittersweet, and it totally captures the project's main point. Gawain comes back to Camelot, but the court completely misunderstands what happened to him. They all start wearing the green sash as a new fashion, a badge of honor. But while they wear this shareable, superficial symbol, Gawain is left with a literal scar on his neck, an unshareable, permanent reminder of his own personal failing. He's not perfect anymore. He is, finally, human.
And that leaves us with one last, really provocative thought. This whole project isn't just about taking apart an old myth. It's about holding a mirror up to our own gilded cages. You know, the codes and the stories we build to protect ourselves from the messy truth. So the real question it asks is, what happens when our own cages are broken? And can we learn to embrace the messy, beautiful humanity we find inside?